This is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Ethan Felizzari-Castillo. They hope I
That's
got it
it.
right.
You said it
And
great.
you're a director, producer, writer. And we're going to talk about the state of indie film, theater, and music, which is something I'm really into because I'm a big time into talking to emerging artists. The podcast started with singer-songwriters, and we branched into film directors and actors and writers, anybody who's a creative. So
It's
this is
amazing.
something that we're always really love talking to creative people, and this is going to be a cool conversation. But before we get to the depth of that, one of the things the question I ask every guest on the show is like, what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Oh man, what motivates me honestly is it's really just the idea of like creating art that's gonna last. I really love the fact, especially in the film medium, but really honestly everywhere, but in the film medium, you have the ability to make something that's going to be there forever. And I
Mhm.
think there's something really special about that. Music, I think is very similar in that state too. So to me, that's something that really drives me is the idea that like the current state of whatever I'm creating, that mindset that I'm in, I get to
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
bottle up in a
Yeah,
way and like
yeah,
yeah,
step
and like
over it.
make that into a thing. It's really inspiring to me. I don't know if that's the sole thing that inspires me. I think my family inspires me and my upbringing inspires me, but that is something that especially as of late, really been thinking about more. Yeah,
I think it's important to kind of capture that.
yeah,
It's a super important. Because like as an artist, I tend to be more experimental with kind of fusion, prog rock type of mindset. And that mindset sometimes it's like in the moment. It's like the
yeah.
happy accident, and you can't catch it on tape. Take 3 or 4 might be better than take 99.
That's
And
it.
we're kind of into this idea that if you're in that flow state and you capture it, well, that is the song, right?
Yeah,
It is
that's
that point.
exactly right, man.
Yeah,
That's
and it's like
exactly
where our
right. Yeah,
stories could be 4 minutes, or it could be 15 minutes. Like we back in the prog rock, we could take 20 minutes, to
sure,
do a song, but we're trying to tell a story, and it's in a more encapsulated, not as big as the stories that you can tell on film. But
sure.
in the mind frame, it still can be that big because it can stick in people's minds as like
A
a
hundred
sound.
percent. 100%. And I mean, I think you have the same idea with theater as well, right? Like theater, you're making something that maybe it's not going to last forever in like a tangible sense, but it's going to last in someone's mind forever. And what you can do with that performance live, you'll never be able to do it quite the same way again. Which I
Yeah,
find so beautiful about. That's what I find so beautiful about film, theater, and music, right? It's just like it's art in general. It doesn't matter what form it is. I mean, it could even be something as like cooking, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Cooking
Well,
food,
cooking
like,
is at a point in time because like you can make a
yeah,
recipe, but there's certain like days that you make it that it comes out better than other days.
it comes out in the exactly. So it's like I think there's something so beautiful. That's what drives, I think, so many artists, even if we don't always say it, that feeling that you feel when you've made something, there's almost nothing better than that. There's like something so euphoric about it.
Yeah,
It's
like
why
it's very
creative.
cathartic for me.
Yeah, me too. That's what I was
Because
gonna
I
say.
have
Yeah,
this bedroom
100%.
studio because I like to create all the time. So I've got all my I'm a keyboardist, synthesis. I'm a sound designer. So I spend hours just taking sine waves and ramp waves and
Playing
just
around.
trying to
Yeah,
get a tone
I love
out
that.
of my modes, trying to build a
I love
tone
that.
before I even use it. And it's kind of maybe like a film director trying to get that lens or that shot by the different lighting and trying to focus on, what that shot's going to be like, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And then the whole art direction of it, and then the mechanics of all the things that you have around you, all the team members that can help your vision. And then like what if the lighting guy has a different idea than you? You know?
Yeah.
So it's like
100%.
does it work or does it not work? And then you're looking at like, oh, does this take better than that take, or what does it change? Wondering like
Yeah.
how does that feel when you're doing that kind of work?
Oh, man, I mean, I think with film, it's so interesting because film is unlike certain aspects of music. where music can feel at times like a solo thing, and then at times you're playing with the band. And I think that's the best way to describe what film and theater is like.
Like
It's
the
like
band.
playing a band.
Yeah.
It's like everybody has their reasoning for being there, and everyone has their moment to shine in whatever way is important to the song, whatever the song is. You're in service to the piece that you're playing when you're playing in a band, right? So whether you're a keyboardist or guitar player, bassist or drummer, like everybody is equally as important because you're building what that song is supposed to be. And the same thing goes for film. I mean, film, it's like you're trying to find those moments, but it comes best when it's like everyone is moving and working on all cylinders when you're playing like a band. And it's
Yeah.
really cool when a movie and a piece of theater are like really working. Everybody is moving at like in perfect sync with
All
one
kind of
another,
they're like,
and
yeah, they're tuned with each other. It's like
that's
they're
it,
in
man.
sync.
And
Yeah.
that's it, dude. And I I play music as well, for fun mainly, but when I play live, I also play keys, and I'm playing live, and there's that moment where you can look at your fellow bandmates and you could just be like, you sound really good
Yeah,
right now.
we're on it.
It's
We're on
like
it tonight.
we're
Like
on it.
yeah, when you're on it, like you got that thing. Like
There's
you get
something
that groove.
so unbelievably special about that. And on a film set, when you can capture that energy and everyone's moving well, the actors, the lights, and that's what a good team does for you, right? Just like that's what a good band does for you. And that's what
Yeah, it's like you have
when
that team, right? Like
when
your
you have
band
that
is
common goal. Yeah,
yeah, a lot of
yeah,
times like on
exactly.
films, like do you keep the same lighting people, the same film camera people,
Yeah.
because like you
Yeah. I
want
mean,
to keep the consistency, or do you like to change it up?
it depends. It depends on the project. I often find that I like to let the project tell me what it's going to need. I think just like a band, there are people who are going to have certain strengths. Like I know saxophonists who are just like, oh, the way they rip this solo, or this guitar player, the way he just plays so gently when he's playing this song. Like I know it's going to feel right for this moment, whatever it is. It's the same idea when it comes to film, right? It's like there's going to be moments where I can work with the same people and over and over and over again. And there's people that understand my language and can adapt. But there's also times where you feel like, let me bring in this other person. What happens here when we start improvising together, when we start going back and forth together? How, as filmmakers, can we work together to make something really special? So, I have my core group of people that I love to work with, but every project is so different and every project requires something different. So I'm always open to working with
Open
new
to it, like
teams. And
going into
yeah,
taking
man,
treading into new
yeah,
territory. Yeah,
that's
because
it,
like
man. That's
Bowie
it.
used to always say he didn't feel like an artist unless he's treading water a little bit. And
And yeah, that's exactly it. And you know what? There's also this element, I think, with filmmaking that like everyone's bringing in their own unique perspectives. So when you have other people with varying perspectives coming in and giving something really special, adding something of really great value to the production, it's unbelievable, what the right person can do in that right moment. So it's good, I think, to switch it up and play around with a lot of different people, and because that's what it is at the end of the day, right? We get so lucky that like film or arts can be, any creative job, if it can be your job, what better job in the world is there? You get to play all
yeah,
day, you get to act like
to play, yeah.
yeah, you get to make up a new world. You get to enter into another person's life, and music is the same way in that front too, right? It's like it's all creative feels. Just you have the ability to see the world from a different perspective, and there's truly nothing better than that.
So in terms of like writing, like since you're a writer and you're a producer and a director, do you like it when you're wearing all those hats on a project and you're like a writer, producer, filmmaker, kind of like a prince? He's like, I did it all. I
Well,
mean,
Fanta,
or do you like to have like look at a script from somebody else and say, wow, how I could implement that?
I'll be honest with you. I think directing, producing, and writing all together at the same time is extremely challenging. I often find that I do that when I write and direct something. I often find that I want to be a producer on the project. Now, one thing about me and one thing about the production is that our production company CK, um, the projects that we produce, we don't oftentimes just work on things like solo, right? Like we make something, we believe at the core that art is best made when you have a team.
Mm.
And that is what I do all the time. So I'm never the sole producer. I may have director, producer, writer credit, but there's no way in hell that I'm gonna be a solo producer
Solo
when
producer.
I'm also directing all writing, because producing is so logistic. It very much so is in the film and the theater sense. There is so much creativity that goes into it, but there is also this like really important business aspect of it and logistical side of things that is kind of, it butts heads with your
Director
side,
hat.
right?
Yeah,
It's
because the director hat says, "Why can't I do that?" And then the producer, "Well, I got the budget, and you can't
you
do
can't
that."
do this because you can't afford this, right? So it's like, and the writer, from a writing perspective, you're just thinking, it's all blue skies, right? It's
It's
all
all,
like, let
why
me
not?
just,
Why not? Like, why can't I
let
do
me
that?
just make this thing, you know what I mean? And I think that's the key thing for me, is having that distinction and thinking of it in different phases, right? So if I'm wearing all three hats, like I am right now, right? So I'm working right now on my debut feature that I'm directing. So I've never directed a feature film. This is the first one I'm doing. It's a big leap for me. I've done, I've worked as a producer on a bunch of projects before. For directing a film of this magnitude is very large for me. The film's called Backyard Desert, and it's about a young Border Patrol agent who finds a teenage migrant in the Yuma Desert, Arizona, and it's sort of about how we see each other, right, at its core, like
Yeah,
that message.
yeah,
It's a message about humanity. What we wanted to do was remove politics and policy as the center focus of the film, because these days the border crisis and the migrant crisis become so incredibly politicized, right?
yeah.
And it left the human side. We as humans have forgotten about the human
People's side.
beings on all
You
sides,
want the, yeah, you want
from
the human story, right?
yeah, from the border patrol to people living in the towns to the migrants who are crossing over. There's so many aspects to this story that's so much more nuanced than just saying, close the borders, open the borders. It's
Yeah.
so much more nuanced there. So, we are so excited to tell the story. It was based off of a play that I had a chance to direct. I didn't write the initial play. So with this film, it was so interesting because since I didn't write the initial play, it's written by an amazing playwright named Nancy Irene Kelly. When she wrote it and I got a chance to direct the first ever production of it in New York City, I was enamored with how she used dialogue to really convey the situation. And what she did with that dialogue was just so impressive to me. I always wanted it to stay as a piece of theater. But unfortunately, the way COVID came in and kind of killed every, up and coming production that was really had any legs in theater, we had to abandon the theatrical production and figure out a way to keep it alive if we wanted to keep it alive. And I love the story so much. It's wild. We did the first production in 2018, and now 6+ years later, the film I think rings truer now than it ever did before, which is even wild to think about it. And what we did, and what was interesting, was I got the opportunity to adapt it with Nancy, so we did it together. And when we were adapting it, we thought about it in phases, right? So we adapted it thinking, let's make this into a movie, not how much money are we going to have to make it. Let's just make the movie in the way we think we know how to tell the story. How do we grab it from the stage and expand upon and make it colorful, make it this beautiful, real, on location story? And we took about a year and a half, 2 years to really get it right. We got it where we think now it's right. And then came time for me to wear that director hat a little bit, start thinking, okay, if I'm going to direct this film, what is the overall look going to be? What is the vibe going to be? What's that feel going to be? But then very quickly, I had to put that director hat to sleep, because I could not, I have to focus on how am I going to get this money and how are we going to make this thing actually happen? This is an idea. How do we now formulate the team? And as a producer, the main job, one of your main jobs when you're starting a production is not just developing the script to be at its best possible, final version, but it's also getting the right personnel to make the project happen, doing it in a way that's going to be cost efficient. And that's what we've done. We took about a year and a half to then go in and properly produce this thing and like really get this thing moving. And now we're still in a phase, you know, right now today in the start of February, we're still in a phase where we're like any other independent film. You're always looking for money. You're never done with an independent film. When you're working outside of the studio system, you're still constantly fundraising. You're always trying to get, you know, friends or people involved, people to invest in the project. And with a project like ours that has a decent sized budget, every dollar is really helping us, right? So as a producer, I have to go all that. But now we're getting closer to when we're shooting. So while we're still fundraising and I'm still wearing that producer hat, I have to introduce that director hat. So now I'm in that third phase of me as a person. I was the writer thinking blue sky. I was the producer thinking logistically. And now I have to think creatively. How do I, in a really emotionally available way, tell this story that is so important? And then there's all this timely aspect to it because of the state of the current world. So, and not just in this country, really the state of just human beings in this world, how we see our neighbor and our people in this world, how we're all viewing each other. So now creatively, I have to say, how do I grab this story that I know works on stage? How do I transfer it into film? And as a director, the beautiful part is you have a great team. We have a great director of photography, cinematographer, right? Luke Pengeli, who is doing some amazing work, and he has a lot of say in what that vision and what that look is like. And our production designer, Alessandra, she has a lot of say in what that feels like. So now I get to work on that creative side. But yeah, man, it is an interesting thing to wear all three of those hats. I don't always recommend it. I'm working on other projects. I'm working on a web series that I'm just producing. I'm working on another feature that I'm just producing. And, you know, there's a time and place when you can wear all three, but wearing all three means no sleep for many months, maybe many years. But I love it. I wouldn't trade it.
But what they can, like, as an artist, sometimes like constraints can lead to certain creative decisions. Like if I'm using a certain artistic tool as a musician, right?
Yeah.
And it's like if I have a synthesizer that's monophonic versus polyphonic, then I can only do like one note at a time. I have
100%.
to figure out how I'm gonna weave that through that versus like, oh, I could just use something with like unlimited polyphony. But then like that's different than like I use a Hammond B3 versus using like a Moog, mini Moog. Like it's always like what choices I have to make in terms of what I'm going to do with the sound and what constraints I have. It's like Stevie Wonder, he could take it, he could do one note, overdub it, over and build the chords track by track, layering it. Takes a lot of time to do that. Versus like, oh, I could just take the Hammond B3 and play the chord.
That's it. Yeah.
And like what you got to do.
It's so interesting because that relates to so many things, I think, for any artist, and I think can resonate with so many artists, right? It's like there sometimes constraints or budgeting or circumstance feels like someone has me locked up and I can't break free and express myself. But other times it's when your most creative elements come out, right? So it's so interesting. I mean, I think about that often. I was having a great call today with our line producer, who handles the line producer handling like budgets and logistics for the day-to-day operations, and with my other producers, Stephanie and Adam. And we were having a conversation about, not sacrificing my vision as a director. And I had to have that early conversation of like, what am I willing to sacrifice? Like, what am I actually willing to now before we even shoot this thing? What am I willing to say? It's okay. We don't have to capture it. Right. Because whether I use it or not is almost a different conversation because I can decide that later on. But if I don't shoot it, if I don't shoot it, I don't have it. Right. It's just like, exactly, man. Exactly. So it's like, I find myself in that interesting place where like I'm using constraints that I'm also partially setting on myself as a producer. I'm using that to my advantage and to hopefully allow me to be more creative and find other ways to do it, right? If something shot is too expensive or a shot is too dangerous or something is too too extensive, or it's going to take us too much time. We only have a certain amount of time. Okay, great. How do I not cut it, but instead utilize my creativity of the team to be able to still tell it in a really interesting way? And you see it all the time in art, right? You see it with, artists in music who have deadlines and they have to make an album by a certain period of time, and they have to, call in friends to sing backup or do this. And you see it in film, you see it in theater, and you got to get creative. But that's we said at the beginning of this conversation, but that's when
that's the fun. That's
the juices are flowing. Yeah, man. That's what
I like the idea. Like, you think about it, like I could be restrained by a Tascam 4-track, and I could only bounce so much on it, right?
Yeah.
Versus like a modern DAW, I could do anything, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so like if I decide this song needs to have this constraint to kind of force me in this mindset. So sometimes I actually go and do something with an older tech and not use the DAW, not use the new tech, and constrain myself to a 4-track, and don't use a plugin, and to hand play the notes, right? Don't go and check it. Don't go and fix it on the grid. Just play it through and actually play it like, so it's like in the moment, it's human. It might have micro timing errors, but it feels more present.
Yeah.
So like you have a lot of tools today, like as an artist, right? Like as a director, you have these digital tools, the stuff you could do in post-production, the stuff you could do in real time. There's different things you could do. So with those type of choices today, is stuff you can do with AI, stuff you can do with CGI. There's all these things you can do. Which directions do you choose to go?
So I'm a bit of a purist in some regards. Like, I love for things to be as organic as possible. For music, for example, like if I think the sound of a song would be better played on a grand piano, and a very specific kind of grand piano in a certain room, because there's just an element of it that there's just something about it, right? Yeah. If I know that can't be replicated fully, and there's a way I can do it. It might be a little harder, but there is a way that I can make it happen. I tend to like to go for those things, even if it's a little bit harder. Now, I also, I like to think logistically and realistically. I think, in a perfect world, when I'm working on projects, hopefully in the future, I'm working on projects that are larger in scale, larger in budget. I hope that I can play with more money that gives me the freedom to do whatever I want to do, and that hard shot, I'll make it work. But there's so many tools these days to like help me capture that in the best possible way that's going to make sense realistically for everybody. So while my instinct is always to be as pure as possible to whatever the art form is, I'm always open to new tech and new technology. AI is interesting because AI is one of those things, and I'm sure as a musician you feel this way, but like AI is like, there's some tools that you look at and you're just like, marvelous. This saves me time. The conversation on AI is growing in a way because now there's consumer facing products. There's been AI and stuff for years and years and years now, right? And we've been utilizing AI in the film side. We're using it for editing softwares for years. There's been some sort of AI that's helping do stuff, whether that's like syncing or tracking. I mean, even if you think of music, right, just getting something in time and having things auto snap together, you're using some sort of digital intelligence to do that.
Quantizing has been around. We've been using that for a while,
for years, right? So it's like, I mean, Melodyne and Autotune and all these things, right? Like, these aren't necessarily new things, but just the way in which we can go about it, I feel like, are new, and they're easier than ever. And I think, AI, I'm not one of those filmmakers who's like absolutely avidly 100% calling for the end of AI. I think that there's a time and place, and I think there's
a tool that
it's a tool. That's it. It is a tool.
It's a palette. It's a brush, right?
That's it, man. That's it. I don't use. I would love to use a $50,000 crane for a specific shot, but I can't. So instead, what I do is I use a really amazing drone that's going to get me something very similar.
Yeah.
Maybe
Here's the
I'll
tech that you
notice.
can use. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll notice the difference. I'll notice that the movement feels a little more mechanical, where the other one had this like
More
this
flowing.
softness to it, or that, you know, I'll notice something, but maybe the audience won't. And I have to use what the tool I have available for me. And I think the AI and other tech is the same idea. It's like I don't dismiss it, but I also don't rely on it. And I think that's the dangerous part about it.
But I think the danger is when you see writers, you know, saying what they wrote pretty much their book all with prompts. Right?
And that to me is scary. Like that to me is
think about a
where like,
musician that said they wrote the whole song with prompts and they actually didn't play a note on their guitar or their bass or their horn or anything. And I was like, okay, well, you're more of a producer, right?
Yeah.
Rather than a musician. And I think the line sometimes crosses where people are using tools and it's like, okay, this person is a really good producer. They're a good DJ, but they're not the same as somebody sitting there in like Miles Davis or Weather Report.
Exactly.
Playing
Exactly.
it. And if you try to say that we don't need a weather report anymore, we don't need like John Coltrane Quartet, we don't need that type of thing. I'm always going to argue, like, I think you can have all those things. I just have a problem with some of the tech bros try to say they can start playing.
That's where I have the issue too. I mean, like it's the tech industry and the tech bros and all the tech fanatics that are like, oh yeah, great. Now the music industry will be changed forever. Now we can be the artists and we can be multimillionaires. I'm like, boy, if it was that easy, everyone would have just done this.
I'm sorry. It's like I'm always gonna want to see if there's another Hendrix, right? If there's another Prince, if there's another Sun Ra, you know, I don't think the music should not be a space for like there was this whole idea of like the democratization of music, and I think that's cool for young people to learn how to do stuff.
Yeah,
but like if there's a craft, and to say that you're going to democratize the craft, so there's no craftsmen.
Yeah,
really.
It's like a restaurant, man, or it's like an auto body shop, right? It's like just because you can do it doesn't mean that you're the best at it, or doesn't mean that's where I want to go spend my money, right? So it's like I think there's an idea that like people should be able to have access to things. I think people do. I mean, the fact that you can buy a microphone, you can buy a camera, you can do all this for like $100 now. You can get a podcasting mic for $100 and a small. You don't even need a camera. You just grab your iPhone, right?
Well, yeah, I was doing my podcast on my phone for years before I got my additional equipment. But I had to stumbled up, you know.
And you don't even need anything better sometimes. Sometimes the quality that these devices have now that we already have, that we already own, they're so good. So like things are already accessible, and I think accessibility is so important because it introduces people. But I completely agree with what you're saying. Like there's an argument to be made about like having more accessibility being a positive thing, but ignoring the fact that this is an art form. There is a craft to this.
I get really I don't know. It's just, I'm a child of the 70s, and I grew up listening to complete thoughts on albums.
Sure.
And you know, and being able to like understand an artist not just from their biggest hit, but from the deeper cuts, actually show me who they are. It's like, do you want to read the cliff notes to Moby Dick, or do you want to read it?
Exactly.
Do you want to what somebody give you like a high level picture of what Citizen Kane is, or The Third Man? Or you know, anything Orson Welles did, right? Or you actually want to watch it and critique it and look at what he's doing.
That's it. 100%.
To me, it's like you need to actually experience it. And sometimes I think the younger people are kind of getting ripped off when all they get is one song from an artist and they never get deeper than that one song.
And it's the state of music, you know, kind of diving into our topic too, right? Like the state of music, the state of film, I think are both they're
tied together.
Both really, really tied together in an interesting way, and it's because of streaming, right? And it's like streaming has caused us to have everything right here. What is so beautiful about theater is that theater can never be extremely accessible. right? It can never be right here. You have to leave. You have to leave your house.
have to
You
go
gotta
to New
go
York,
experience
go
it.
to the San Francisco, go into the
Whoever.
that theater.
Even go to your local community theater in whatever city you're in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to physically be in the space. Go to your local high school and watch their production of Annie, whatever it is. You know what I mean? But it's like you have to be there. But film and music has done something so interesting and amazing and equally sad, where they've said for $10, for $15, for $20, you have access to everything.
Yeah.
And like I'm 20, I'm about to be 28 this year. And I grew up in an age where things started going digital. Right when I remember buying CDs, and I still had CDs. Like that was like the start of when I started getting into music or film. Like I remember getting DVDs. Then I remember when it transferred into Blu-ray.
I'm a VHS. I was a Blockbuster VHS.
VHS, I remember a little bit. I remember I was in 97. I remember I have a few VHSs that my family has. In fact, I have a handful of VHSs here. One of my favorite films of all time, Singing in the Rain. I have it right here. VHS copy. VHS copy here. So I do have some VHSs, but and I think there's it's interesting because as we I got a chance to see what it was like when we had the physical copies of things to when it became digital. And that's what I really like. I remember with my friends having an iPod and, burning CDs for each other so we could then download it into our digital thing and, be able to listen to it on iTunes. And I remember LimeWire and all these things and like downloading music and all that stuff. And then you lose this ability to like buy a physical product or even buy a digital version of the product because now you have these ginormous streaming libraries. And now the problem becomes it's our attention span, right? It's like I think a lot of people love to blame social media for ruining our attention spans. I don't think it's just social media. It's our constant need as consumers, especially lovers of art, which human beings naturally love art. We need things we need to finish something and what's next, and we can never sit with anything. So like with music, now having the fact that I can go and look up any artist I want on Spotify for the most part. I can go through I can sit down and say I want to listen to Michael Jackson's first song ever and listen all the way through, and I can do it in one night if I really felt like it, right? And the fact that it's so accessible makes it so that you lose this precious moment of having to go to the store, support a local business, open up the CD.
Vinyl. Yeah, I used to get the vinyls. So I'm a child of the 70s. And the thing about the vinyl that I found the problem with today's listeners is I want to put it on them. But the fact is, I had to listen to Led Zeppelin 4 all the way through. I listened to Yes all the way through, Pink Floyd all the way through. I bought Purple Rain on vinyl. I listen. I could. You don't really skip around a lot when you have vinyl. So you tend to get the complete thought of the artist.
Exactly, and like the music, the music is so much more thoughtful, and same thing with the films. The films are so much more thoughtful when they are a moment. Like there's nothing like going to the movie theater, and I know a lot of people who have difference of opinions. Like, but the comfort of the couch, I get it. But being in a movie theater and seeing a movie that really touched your soul, that made you think, that made you feel. There's nothing better than that. And the movies are still being made. Movies are still getting releases in theaters. People are just seeing them less and less. So they're getting smaller releases. Instead of getting a 3-month run or 4-month run, getting a 1 weekend run or 2 weekend run, and then they're going on streaming. And look, they get lost in a library of hundreds of thousands of other pieces of content.
That's the problem, is they get lost in the kind of
in this ether, in this weird
you get lost on the wire.
Exactly.
Said, you're out in the wire, but
that's it. No, but you're 100% right. And the same thing is with music, right? It's like the state of independent music is the same way. Same thing with independent film. It's like you can have the best song like ever. You can have a song that is so powerful. You can have a film that is so unbelievably powerful, but because these are apps that people pay for and they're so monopolized and like monetized and controlled by a select few, your stuff will get pushed to the back. And people have to
the algorithm doesn't put your stuff on the top 10 list. Like in the recommended list to watch is kind of like the payola. kind of like the payola.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying.
Vision.
Yes, 100%. And that's the problem. That's what we have, right? So we have this era of music and film and art where it's so people are just not able to sit with stuff anymore. Like when I go to a movie theater, I can't just watch the next thing right away. You know, if I want to, I guess I could, but you probably wouldn't. You know, you're gonna go see a movie, get your snack, sit down, go use the bathroom, go home. You're gonna drive home and you're going to be thinking about this movie. We're sitting with the art. When if I had a CD back when I was listening to something in my little stereo that I had in my room, and I put on the CD, I put it inside, and I listened to it. If I wanted to listen to the next thing, I have to go and physically grab that other CD and put it in. And I can only have so many CDs. Yeah, I can't have an endless amount of CDs. So I'm
on the record.
Exactly. And I'm developing my taste. I'm understanding the artist, like you said before, and I'm appreciating the music because I can't just have an endless amount of it. I don't think human beings were ever meant to have this much access to this much art.
This is an overload with then, you know, the tech bros start saying that what AI can create it then, because then it becomes what happens is it becomes background music.
Yep.
Instead of listening to music.
And what also hurts so much as an artist is that it also, you know, you hear constant narrative that I hear is like, oh, no one makes good movies anymore, though. No one makes good TV anymore, or no one makes good music anymore. That's not true. This is probably, if anything, there's probably the best of everything there ever has been in history because we have so many things to choose from. The problem is that our pool is too big, and the select few who control the industries, they're showing you a little portion.
Yeah, well, they're kind of pushing them. They're not pushing, you know, like when I was a kid and I read like, you know, Spin and Rolling Stone and Billboard or, you know, all these different like reviewers that would, you know, talk about a band. And I would go find out about like a band from Minnesota, Huskadoo. Right, Huskadoo is this punk band. It's like very, you know, never really sold a lot of records, but kind of it's like the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. They're very influential on the grunge movement. That you wouldn't really have like the Pearl Jams and Nirvanas without the Huskadoos and the replacements. And so there was a thing with the college radio that, you know, I went to Bowdoin and the college radio, they were playing the Huskadoo, they're playing Paul Westerberg and the Replays, they're playing these underground bands. Right, there was kind of pre-punk bands. So we like post-punk, pre-grunge stuff. And today is like where that stuff exists. I find bands and I interview. I find these underground bands. That's what I do on the show. But it's like people aren't looking for them unless, you know, there's some kids looking for them, but it's just not getting publicized.
No, it's not getting publicized, and it's not getting publicized the same way. Like, it's unfortunate because, again, with this much access to independent art and this much stuff that's being created, because it's so much music out there, so many filmmakers out there, the fact that we're not getting a chance to be able to to listen to it and see all these things is because it's too oversaturated. It's, you know, the industry has become about just, hey, this artist got 1,000 streams, this artist got 1,000 streams, this art, you know, and it's like it's less about the content.
Yeah, it's like the CBGBs. It's like the CBGB situation, right? You get a band like the Talking Heads, you get, you know, like the Ramones, and you get, you know, Patti Smith, and all these, like the Television, in the same club, the variation of those bands, right? They're not all the same at all, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that you had that level of quality, and like, you know, that level of quality exists out there, but the algorithm doesn't put it up.
No, and it doesn't allow it doesn't allow us to like, and that's the sad part. Like I'll go, you know, I live in New York, and I mean, I'll go into, you know, see a show at a local place, and, you know, Arlene's Grocery, Lower East Side. You go in, you see one of the best artists you've ever seen. You're like, wow, how hasn't this person blown up yet? And then you remember the state of the industry, and you think of the fact that they haven't blown up because they don't have the opportunity to, right? Like I on top of everything I do on the production side for film and for theater, I also work in the music side. So CK Productions, we're a multimedia production company. So we
do music
work in
videos
film,
stuff.
work in theater, we do music. And in what we do in music specifically, so we have different branches that focus on different things. CK Records is the name of the branch that focuses on music. Primarily what it is, it's our house label to be able to release any theatrical projects or film scores or anything, to be able to release it and own our own stuff. And it's a sort of a thing I wanted to do so that we can keep it within house, and we have a little
yeah,
team.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then try to at least. And then additionally we were managing artists for a very long time. We still work on some management teams. I'm very lucky to my best friend Rob Eberly. He's a fantastic artist who makes this really awesome like indie alternative pop, inspired by some really, really great artists, and it just fantastic music. And I work on his management team and help him out with some things when I can.
He should come on the podcast. I should interview him.
He should. I'll send you his information. We'll get him on. But he is absolutely fantastic, and he makes music that's really personal, and it really it also commercial. One of the things that I found so interesting about it is that he's not reinventing the field, nor does he want to. He says, this is music I like to listen to. This is the music that I want to make. This is the music that feels really personal to me. So he's making music that just feels unique, but still feels familiar. It's a really great place to be.
That's the ticket. That's how you
exactly. And that's how you want to get through, right? And then you see, I see moments where I get to celebrate with him, major milestones in his career, and then it'll just be like, and it's going up, and nothing, right? And it's because this industry has like almost levels, right? Especially now more than ever. Before, I think there used to be a path. There used to be like, okay, get your songs played by some radio station, get your songs played by some DJs, or get friends to put it on playlists. And, play local shows.
Yeah,
exactly.
You can get on the train. You can get on it. And
you keep going.
Yeah,
exactly. And at least there's a route. You might not get there, but at least there's a route to get there. Now that route becomes, okay, not only do you have to do this, but you have to be a full-time influencer who's constantly promoting music on TikTok and on Instagram and on social media. Not only that, but you got to be making really good music videos. And nowadays they don't, audiences don't just want music videos that are, it's just a video. They want something that looks cinematic, and they want something that's going to match quality of certain things that they're seeing constantly. And then you got to be live streaming. You got to still be playing gigs, but people don't really come out to the same gigs the same way they used to. So, and it's like, when does an independent artist get to survive and actually reap any of these awards? And how they break through? It's like you're constantly on this journey of trying to find how to break through, and you never get a chance as an independent artist to really focus on the music. And Rob is a very lucky artist in the sense where he has a wonderful team of people around him. His father, me, I'm giving myself a little compliment there, but genuinely, like, he has a great group of people, like a really good
focus on that.
Exactly. He still does. I'm not gonna discredit him. He focuses on all of this stuff, and he is very hands-on with everything. He is doing so much work. But he's lucky that he has the ability to at least have people bounce ideas off of. I think of people who haven't had that ability yet, or haven't had the ability to have any sort of team at all, and like what that's like. Not even the ability to bounce ideas off of. Like, when do you focus on the music? Because if you're constantly only focused on being a marketing manager for your career, when does the music side come in? So it's such an interesting state that we've
that kind of created. It's a situation where it seems like it sounds talking about like a teenage wasteland, and like this, it's like too much. It's like an overload, but it's this overload that
overload everything.
And then you're like, overloading everything, and that's kind of like what Townsend's like common themes that he was always talking. He actually talked about the net, like the Who's next album was supposed to be this rock opera called Lifehouse, about people who are connected to the net and are in these suits, and they were getting all their information through these wired transmissions, where basically is the internet. He's talking about this in like 73, 74. And there's an overload, and there's all kinds of problems. And and it's like that. The whole is like we got fooled again.
And look, we don't learn our lessons, right? Like anytime human beings do things like this in history, and try, I think like there's such good intention with something like a Spotify or a Netflix, right? Like the idea of accessibility again, especially in communities that don't have the resources or the ability to see certain movies, or they live in an area that doesn't have movie theaters. Like, wow, now you have this ability to watch all these movies. As a lover of music, now I can listen to all this music for just this amount per month. There's so many pluses to the streaming side, but there's also so many negatives from the artist perspective, where it's like,
just the curated art. Maybe
yeah,
that was people were like, oh, these Rolling Stone music editors, they have big heads or whatever. But there's a point where, like, I just somehow, if I go back to the stuff I was listening to in the 80s or in like 74, and I look
yeah,
at the record chart in 1974, the top 20, and I look at the chart now, I got a problem.
it's very different. And you look at how, I mean, people used to be able to make money, right, off of music. Like you used to be able to actually, and I'm not just saying like the largest stars, like even these artists that never broke into, like people, you could actually make a living off of being a touring artist.
Yeah,
Now,
like bands like the Replacements and stuff, they were in the Econoline van, bouncing from city to city.
yeah, how do you do that now? You know what I mean?
How do you do that?
How do you do that now? And now, like one of the strategies that we have with Rob that we've been really, really adamant about is like just growing by the two fan rule, right? Like get two people, have them really love your stuff, and have them love it to a point. Yeah, he has a handful. He has a handful, which we're happy to see. But like, you get two people who love your stuff. You hope they show it to two more, and then you hope that it keeps growing, like that it keeps multiplying in twos. And I really firmly believe that theory is really, really true. Now it's just so slow. It's something that sure maybe you can get a few people to care about it, but somewhere along the way, as you open it up to more and more people are not going to. They're not going to care as much. Maybe they like the song. Maybe they stream it. Maybe they listen to add it to their playlist. Sure. Which is why a lot of artists these days, independent artists, some of them have 300,000 streams. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. But do they have fans? Right? That's the difference. It's
That's
like,
the problem. They might have that one song they stream, but they don't. They're not the super. They don't buy your CD. They don't buy your T-shirt. They don't show up at your show. They don't read the newsletter. So that's the problem.
Which is where. Exactly. And it's where it was before, right? Like before you had you wanted to listen to this, you wanted to even consider becoming a fan, you had to pay this guy $10 to get the CD. Even if you just wanted to consider being the fan, not even be the fan, you had to pay them
$10. Yeah.
Give them the $10. Now you don't even have to give them any money, because now you're just giving them a stream. Sure, it's helping the numbers, but you're making a fraction of a penny, right? Like off of a single stream.
1,000, like you make what, $300 or something?
If that, yeah.
So it's like before, if it was 99 cents or it was $10, and you got a percent of that $10, and then you got your advance, and you're on the road, you're showing up the tours,
you can make money. You can make money.
Opening up for different bands, and you're getting exposed to different areas. And it's like, Tom Petty, when he had to go to Europe, he kind of broke in Europe, and then he came back, and then people still didn't like him. And they had somebody, they finally playing his stuff on the radio, and he started getting traction. But he got that DJ thing going on. But it's like, like you had to work.
And it's still the same. It's so sad to see, but it's like it's the same thing. The film industry too. Film industry is the same thing, where it's like before you used to make your money off of having theatrical release, and theaters would never play you for a weekend. They'd play you for a few weekends, because no one ever looked at. Now we look at movies, and if they don't make $100 million opening weekend, we're like, flop. It was a bad movie. The movie made nothing.
You failed.
And you're like, whoa, hold on, And now movies are so expensive, right? These big studios are making $700 million. The last Avatar movie, $800 million or whatever it was. Yeah. Also, and then I think with marketing ended up being $1 billion. Mean $1 billion? Like, that's crazy.
Well, you want to make a film that's like I like film noir. I like detectives. I like watching like The Third Man or something like.
Sure.
Don't need a lot of money to do that kind of movie. Right? Maybe
No,
you do if
and
you
like,
want to get crazy with it, but I don't think you
and
have to get anywhere near Avatar money
you
for that.
you definitely don't, and that's the problem. It's like it's a twofold problem. You have studios not properly thinking about what audiences actually want, and they're just making things that are hundreds of millions of dollars, thinking, okay, but if we make something hundreds of millions of dollars, it's a huge IP, all of these people are going to come and watch this movie. Sure, maybe you can make $1 billion, but why is making $1 billion so important? If I make $25 million movies and every single one of them make $10 million, isn't that overall just starting to become a
Yeah.
better
What's wrong with
investment?
that?
You
Yeah,
know
it's
what I mean? It's a
like a
better
spaghetti.
investment.
I'd rather see a
Yeah,
spaghetti western like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right?
a
And
hundred percent. Yeah.
don't have to do a lot of special effects, but just have Clint Eastwood with his facial expressions,
And
right?
dude, there's so many movies that I'm so happy to see that are going back to that kind of a vibe. And like there's some of the best films are coming out right now, like some wonderful independent movies. I truly do believe this is a golden age of cinema the last 5 years. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me. I think the problem is we're looking at the big studios and saying, what do you mean? How could this be golden age? When you have the superhero blockbusters or live action remakes of animated movies or this, that, the other. But if you look past that and do a little bit of digging, just like you would for music, just like you would if you want to really find that good next rock artist, a good jazz artist, you're like, who's the guy who's playing that weird little club in New York City that you've never heard
Yeah.
of, but
Or you
they're
find
they're
somebody in New
really
Zealand
talented.
or Austria. I find
Exactly.
people all over the world. I look
Exactly.
for bands wherever they are, right? So you find some
Exactly.
punk rocker that's in Berlin, right? Or you find somebody
Exactly.
that's in Latvia. I found this
Exactly.
artist in Latvia that connects to plants and does like synthesis by taking her hooking her
So cool,
oscillators
man.
to plants and mushrooms. And it's
That
like
is the
back in
coolest thing.
I know like back in the 80s, that would have been on MTV and she would have got super big, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I feel like not even just the 80s. You could just say the early thousands and it would have been better. Like it's crazy to think how fast we have abandoned so much of what we loved about art. And it's, in a time where art is more accessible, of course art is gonna keep getting better. And our world is so much more complex than it was 50 years ago. When you listen to music 50 years ago, there are some classic songs that still hit equally as hard, but there's some
Hard, yeah.
music out there that's out right now that is incredibly complex, not just from a composition standpoint or a production standpoint, but from a lyrical standpoint, from a
Oh yeah,
performance
it's really
standpoint.
good stuff.
I
Right.
listen to an artist like Jacob Collier. Jacob Collier making this odd blend of jazz and alternative and hip hop and funk
Yeah, the
and soul
combination,
and
like, expansive. I like
yeah,
things that cross genre. Like you're saying,
yeah, me
cross
too.
genre is where it's at, and
and that's
experiment.
and that's the beauty is like now, because we as human beings have grown, we have the ability to have some of the most complex art ever in history. We have some great art that's being made. It's just not able to be found in the same way, and it's very sad to see. But also, I do have hope. I tend to be an optimist, and I do think that people who really care about the art,
Well, they find it.
in whatever art form, they're starting to find it, and they're starting to care more about supporting their pockets. And I don't mean in a selfish way of saying like, let's get the richest artists to be richer, but I mean like I'm noticing that people are wearing band merch again. I'm noticing that people are like, they find out that their favorite, some random actor that they support is in a movie, they buy tickets, and there's all these like pay it
Well,
forward
yeah, because I think
campaigns that
people
you're
are getting
seeing.
tired of
It's
the
changing.
brand X. Brand X being
Exactly.
marketed by the big multinational conglomerate wants me to see what they say is the big thing. But it's kind of punk
Exactly.
to go like that band from like the CBGBs kind of area and find a band
Oh
like a
yeah,
television,
man.
right? Find a band like a television or find a David Byrne from a Talking Heads and see that guy doing what he was doing, with Psycho Killers. Is like I saw that as a kid, right? And I'm like, wow, that's not punk, but it's kind of punk. Like, what is that? And I'm like,
It's
that's
punk. It's
what
like punk to like it. Yeah,
yeah,
I get what you
like
mean.
the
Like
light.
it's not always like the genre of it is like, oh, this is so punk, whatever. It's like it is almost now so punk to just be like, I'm not gonna watch this or I'm gonna support this instead. Like
Yeah, I'm
that
gonna
it's
do
so
something else.
beautiful. it's so beautiful the state in which we're at. And I do believe that as AI becomes a more prevalent force within all of these creative industries, people are going to want and they're going to crave that authenticity, and they're
Yeah, the
going to look
vulnerability
for
of something that's not exactly perfect, right? That might be quirky, might be like David Byrne wearing that big suit from like Stop Making Sense, right?
Yep.
Or doing those quirky moves on the videos. It's like, what is? It's like, but it was like that is the art. The nature of art is sometimes it's like strange. You know, they think about Jim Morrison. You know, about like Strange Days. You know, this idea.
Sure.
Like he was a poet, became a rock star. A
Yeah.
poet became a rock star because he
Yeah.
was deep into romantic poetry and all this heavy stuff, and he put it into the music. I mean, the first Doors songs were like 20-minute, rants of this poetry and this expressive fusion kind of craziness. And I'm like, that's exactly where my head was at. It's like that's kind of Grateful Dead happenings or Frank Zappa and the Mothers. That's where I'm always looking like there are people still doing that stuff. There's
Oh
still
yeah.
people and doing it in different ways because they have different tech.
Different ways.
Yeah,
It
to be
is
able to
not
do
gone.
things and mix things together.
Yep. 100%.
And with the visual art, like you said, like you don't have to be the avatar. You can do a movie like your movie about this whole thing about immigration and the situation and looking at a human point of view, like humanism. Because like,
Yep.
are we citizens of a nation or are we like citizens of the planet? Like
Yeah.
every human being, if you found a human being on another planet, it's like, what is a miracle? But here you take it for granted. Oh, well, it's just a human being. They're in the wrong spot. It's like, okay, well, isn't it just a
Why?
miracle that human beings even exist?
It's the little
Now,
thing. It's the
you're in
little
the wrong
things like
place.
that. That's it. It's a little thing like that that are going to prevail when it comes to art, because we, at the end of the day, want human stories. Governments cannot divide us forever. History has always shown that, and not just governments, but businesses and tech companies, all this stuff. They cannot divide us forever, and art always prevails, and we'll
Well,
come out on the other
art's the
side.
random factor. Art is the random thing that they can't control. That the
They can
kids
never,
like will
never,
always
never.
want to rebel. You know, that is like I don't think I want that brand X.
Yep.
I want not brand X. So I want something else. I want to see a movie that's not all about special effects, but like about an actor
Yeah.
or actors or like about the story. Like
Yeah.
like that's why I love
100%.
independent film because you actually see stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe the problem is you have to have patience for a story. You have to have attention span for a story. And sometimes stories aren't just hitting you with a bomb or hitting you with some magical effect. It makes you think, right? And so if you're going for escapism and it's kind of like you want something just to be like the rocket blows up in your face. It's like it's some lasers flashing around. It's like, oh, but like what about the depth of a story? Like, where there's like some
100%,
kind
bro.
of human consequence.
There's
Like,
an element of it that, yeah, it's just innately human. That's a beautiful part about independent art, is that it's more human than anything else. A brand that's using algorithms and spreadsheets can never create.
yeah. It's just and I think people are gonna want to go see that play in real time. They want to see an independent film because they're tired of of all the superheroes and space aliens and all this stuff. And they want to know like this is it a real romantic story, right?
Yeah.
Is it like
Yeah.
it's a Betty Davis level story, like a
100%.
going back to the old movies. I'd like to watch TCM and watch like Jimmy Stewart, and watch Cary
Yeah.
Grant in all
Of
these
course.
classic movies, even some of the silent movies,
Yeah,
Buster
because
Keaton starts taking
they feel the
yeah,
most human, even sometimes, even when you can, older films, when you can feel like they're acting and it kind of feels like a play and it feels maybe not as genuine. There's almost something about it that feels even more genuine because it feels like it's coming from
yeah,
a better
yeah,
place. Yeah,
like Touch of
100%.
Evil. Like I love Touch of Evil, Orson Welles,
100%. Yeah.
and I look at
Yeah.
it, it's the shadows and the
Yeah.
camera and the lighting and the way Orson, like, they zoom in on him in certain places and show the kind of ugliness of it, and he's like doing that, showing, he's showing this kind of nature of like evil,
Yeah,
and it's like, wow, it's like he's making a statement, and that
it's
to me
amazing.
is like, that's
It's
more
amazing.
important than anything blowing up in my face, with some magical space explosions, whatever. I want to see something with depth. Oh, what happened? I think he kicked out. Well, we're in the middle. I think we had a technical difficulty. We're trying to close it off. We're almost at the end of the show, but I think he got kicked out for some kind of problem. But see if he comes back and we'll close it out. If he doesn't come back, then I might close it out. We had a great story, but we can check out ckproductionsnewyork.com. That's his website. And you can connect with him. He's working on a brand new film, as he indicated, and we had a great conversation here. He might have had a technical problem with his computer, but we were great to have Ethan Felizzari-Castillo, director, producer, writer. Oh, here he is.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. I was going to close it out, but I was waiting for you to come back. But yeah,
I'm
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Anybody
that's
who's
cool.
watching, I'm sorry about that. I don't know
Oh,
what
that's good.
happened. It
Well,
just
it's tech. It's
completely
the tech.
completely shut down on me. But hey, that's the new tech, man. That's what we were talking about before. Sometimes the analog stuff. Next time we got to do this in person or something, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's a great, wonderful conversation, and I was just bringing up your
Thanks, man.
website, ckproductionnewyork.com
Yeah, man.
/film.
Yeah, that's my that's our website, ckproductionsnewyork.com. We're, like I said before, we're a multimedia production company. What we care about most is creating art that is telling it's telling stories from a perspective that we don't often hear, and highlighting stories from perspectives that often are not shared with the world. We feel like we like to consider ourselves cause-based filmmakers, where the
Mhm.
movies and the theater and even a lot of the music that we work on, we like to think of it as like, what is this doing to benefit the world, and why is this thing needed?
Consciousness
Mo-
type.
yeah, yeah. I think like there's an element of it where I think a lot of filmmakers want to say something, and sometimes you just want to watch a good movie. You don't want to think too hard. You don't want to relate it back to the world. But like, I think even when you're watching, say, a horror movie, for example, there's still a way to impact the world in
Yeah,
a positive way. And there's still a humanness that we can explore that can give the person watching, the audience watching or listening or absorbing, it gives them a chance to grow. And I think that there's
yeah.
something so
I think
special about that.
Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry used to sneak that social consciousness into their work. To get them,
And,
Rod Serling, Monsters on Maple Street,
yeah,
and then the whole
yeah,
situation with Leonard Nimoy and Spock.
yeah,
And
of
the
course.
kind of racism, like, well, the people like saying Vulcan, you got that green blood, right? And
Yeah.
and so they were kind of sneaking this kind of things like, oh,
I
like
mean,
anti-Vulcan, so, well, what
you
could that
you look
really
at you look at movies like Star Wars, right? Like even something like Star Wars. Star Wars is inherently one of the most political movies that's ever been a big blockbuster, right? Like that's a movie talking
be?
about
Empire.
the empire. I mean, like it can't get any clearer than that, right? And now not to get too political with the world, but like you look at the current state of our world, and you look at what even the prequels were talking about with tariffs on trade routes and all the stuff.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just start
yeah.
looking at things and you're like, why is this like real world? It's because art can be, you can immerse someone in a completely different world, whether it's music in a sonic way, you can do it in a visual way, but you can immerse people in a way that can still change them, have an effect on them, and simultaneously entertain them, right? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't just
yeah.
have to
You
be.
can, like, you can be doing
Yeah,
science fiction, and fantasy writing.
hundred percent.
Always does, like Tolkien. Had his little statements he's making, and like I said, any of it, like you go Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov, they're always science fiction and fantasy writing, and even comic books. Like, they've always were making statements.
Always.
Like
And
the
I think
X-Men, where like this idea
exactly.
back in the '60s of like people being outcast,
Exactly.
talking about that.
It's always been prevalent. I mean, even you look at painters, you look at musicians back in the day, and old classical composers, and like why certain things sound certain ways, and elements of inspiration. Like it's always been art has always been a way to connect people, not just entertain people. It's to change people in some
Mhm.
capacity,
Yeah.
and even if it doesn't always have to be in the most profound way, I can still go watch the Saw movies and
Yeah.
still enjoy them.
Yeah.
But and I don't need to be changed in a way that like my whole worldview and my morals and ethics are now shifted. But instead, I can still find a way to immerse myself in art enough and enjoy it in a way where I am changed in some capacity, or saw things in a different way, or I got to see an art form in a way that I didn't ever think a filmmaker or an artist or a theater performer, an actor, director, whatever it is, that they could do. I didn't know that they could do that, and they've now shown me that it's possible. So it's like it's just art, and especially independent art, it has the most soul. And I'm, like I said, I'm an optimist, man. I really believe in our industries as an artistic collective, as human beings around the world. I believe we're gonna keep making great art, and the tech bros can't stop,
Well,
actual
there's
craftsmen
tendency
from
they
making stuff.
well, like art tends to get created from the times, and when times are
Yeah,
chaotic or frenetic, then artists tend to step up. So I feel there's going to be a lot of great art produced
I think so
because
too.
people will make statements, and they might make it in their science fiction, or it might be kind of hidden or in the subtext, but it's still there. And
That's
sometimes
it.
even the creation of the art is a statement in itself. So yeah, it's just I think I have a lot of belief in what the independent artistic mindset can do in the collective, and I'm glad that you're in that space. And I gave we had the opportunity to talk to you today.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you giving me a platform to chat about my little indie projects. It needs every bit of support, and platforms like yours give creatives an opportunity to be able to find a new audience in any capacity. And I love connecting with fellow creatives, man. So it's been a true pleasure chatting with you today, man. For real.
Yeah, we love to have people come back on. So like when your project is out there in the world, yeah,
I'd love that.
come back, and we will do like a premiere episode of your movie.
Yeah,
So
that
just
would be
come,
amazing.
yeah,
I
come
would
back and
absolutely love that. I would absolutely love that. I'm gonna make sure that I don't lose that contact, and I'm gonna hold you to that. I'm gonna be like,
yeah,
Phantom,
yeah. If you want to bring,
I'm coming back.
we have multiple guests. You could bring the actor, you could bring the writer, you could bring a bunch
Amazing.
of people and do a like
That's
kind
amazing.
of big like thing. Cause I want to get into stuff
Man,
like that. I've always like tried to do that. I have people come back all the time, but like with a movie that hasn't come out yet, that would be really cool. So I'm putting it out
oh
there.
man,
So
that
we'll
would
do it. It'd be
I
cool.
we are definitely going to do it. We're very hopeful that the film, which we're going to shoot at the end of spring, we're hopeful that if we are able to shoot it at the end of spring, that the movie will be completed and ready to go in festival circuits for next year. It's going to be a very quick timeline, but we have a great team that's going to turn it around really fast. And after this thing is turned around and out there into the world, we're hoping that it can get picked up, get some distribution, and get out there in the world, and hopefully we all can enjoy it together. That's what
Yeah.
films are all for. Not just in a theater, but whether even if it's at home on a couch, wherever it is. I look forward to sharing this piece with everybody in the world. And
Yeah. I'm looking
yeah, man,
forward to it.
we will be back. We will be back for sure, having this conversation even further. And let's see, maybe in a year's time, the state of the indie film or music world has shifted a little bit. So it'd be
Yeah.
fun to
Well,
chat again.
I'm always working. I'm working on my stuff. Like I got more music coming.
Amazing, man.
I got an album I've been working on for the last year.
Oh, I cannot wait to listen to it, man. I can't wait to listen to it.
But thank you. Thank you again for being on the show. This will be out. This was live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and will be on all the other podcast platforms you can listen to or watch a podcast. By tomorrow, we'll create a landing page for your audience. They can choose which one they want to check it out on. That's going to be out there for you, and we'll get
I
that to you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, my friend. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for, again, giving an independent art some time. It's really appreciated, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.